Hi everyone! Today, I'd like to talk about a must-read book for parenting called The Gift of Failure by Jessica Lahey. There are 3 points in this book. First, children's enthusiasm must come from their own motivation instead of rewards. Second, education should center on guiding children to make their own decisions. Third, the right type of praise encourages your child. Okay, let's talk about the first point. First, children's enthusiasm must come from their own motivation instead of rewards. You see, the struggle for survival that children faced hundreds of years ago has given way to a struggle for flawless grades in school. Although grades were created to gauge their progress and future performance, they have a significant drawback. They do not develop intrinsic desire in children. Children are driven to achieve high marks from the first day of school. They are told that if they do not have them, then they will not be able to live the life they choose, or even become a respected member of society. This compels all students to choose the same path and aim for straight A's. Failure is no longer an option. Many parents use external rewards such as a new phone to inspire their children to achieve perfect marks. This form of external incentive, however, dampens intrinsic or self-motivated motivation. So this is shown in a monkey experiment conducted by psychologist Harry Harlow. Harlow demonstrated that when monkeys were rewarded on a regular basis, their motivation in completing a task waned, as opposed to monkeys that received no reward. Children must develop their problem-solving strategies to encourage interest. But how do you make a student excited about school? That will need a time for us to sit down and have a talk with our children, talking about what motivates them, which brings us to the second point. The second one is, education should center on guiding children to make their own decisions. You see, parental engagement is critical in a child's education. But there is a distinction between being interested and attempting to control your child's school life. As a result, rather than controlling parenting, you should choose autonomy supportive parenting. Let's talk about one psychologist called Wendy Grolnick. She studied about these autonomy supportive and controlling parents and discovered that when presented with frustrating situations when playing alone, children who were controlled by their moms lost up faster than children who were not. However, an autonomy supportive approach should not be confused with lax parenting. Setting restrictions for your children so they can compare their standards to yours is an example of autonomy support. Furthermore, evidence suggests that children prefer parents who hold them accountable for failing to meet their expectations, compared to controlling parents who closely supervise their children. Simply put, children will respect their parents more when the parents make them responsible for their failure, instead of just parents who check and control how their children should learn. So, this means that it takes time and work to shift from controlling to autonomy supportive mode. But the goal should be to help your child rather than lead him or her. This distinction between the two types, however, is not always obvious, and it is critical to keep this in mind. To value your child's triumphs as well as his or her faults is one example of an autonomy supportive approach. This approach also includes assisting children in discovering new methods to deal with difficulties. Controlling parents, on the other hand, supply solutions before their children have had an opportunity to solve the problem on their own. Now, allowing your children to struggle with challenges teaches them the patience required to find a solution. Remember that not all parenting methods are black and white, and that controlling parenting can appear supportive because it employs rewards, even though it is actually not. Another point to remember is, just as you allow your children to fail, you must also allow yourself to fail as a parent. However, as long as you demonstrate to your children that your love is not contingent on their achievement, you will always be on the right track. Just like me. When I'm parenting my children, I admit my failure to my children and others that I can still not make them interested in school yet. But I'm gonna keep trying, just like what I'm doing now by reading more books on parenting. And that brings us to the point number 3. which is also a great trick to motivate your children, and that is the right type of praise encourages your child. Many parents lavish their children with praise in any way they can think of. Yet, praise can actually demotivate your youngster. It all depends on how you compliment them. So, how should you express your praise? First and foremost, you should praise a child's actions rather than the youngster himself. Praise has several purposes. It can be used to compliment someone on their personality, such as saying, "Hey, you're so amusing." Or it can also be used to compliment someone on their actions, such as stating, "You did this so wonderfully." Dweck's findings reveal that pupils who were labeled as brilliant before the trial began were considerably less likely to persevere with progressively difficult assignments. They also gave up faster than kids who were praised for their diligence. Let's talk another country, which is Japan. Japan is an intriguing counterexample to standard Western schooling practices. Children in Japan are not divided into groups based on their abilities. Instead, there is a widespread assumption that all children are capable of excelling in any field. Furthermore, no subjects are just available to gifted pupils. And instead of complimenting your child on a good grade, try appreciating the effort he or she took in preparing for the test. The more youngsters believe that their gift can be developed via hard work and determination, the less they dread failure. So, in my personal experience, I'm a teacher and a dad. I don't really know how my teacher brain and my parent brain got separated. Somehow, as a teacher, I started to realize that because when I saw my students, they were so increasingly afraid of doing anything. So they just didn't want to take risks and they didn't want to look dumb. So they just wanted to look perfect by staying quiet in the class. And many studies have proven that when teachers and parents work together, children learn better. And at that point, when I was the most irritated with my students' parents, I had made the realization that when my own son, who was 9 at the time, couldn't even tie his own shoes. And that was a difficult moment for me because I had to admit that those parents I was so angry at, I was just one of those parents. And I wasn't really sure how overparenting influenced learning. It seems somehow that overparenting rendered these kids less able to learn. And that was a truly mind-blowing experience when all of this came together and I just realized, wow, by doing what I believe is best for my child, by keeping them safe, by making sure they're never uncomfortable and ensuring that I can rescue them and I make sure that they never have to face failures, I am actually making it more difficult for my children to be good learners. And that's been a big shift in my teaching and in my parenting. I just hope that I can influence my children and my students for the better. I also hope that when they encounter something like different desirable difficulties, which are such an important tool in the classroom, they might get upset and they might give up. But the kids who are used to directing themselves and know that they're competent enough and that they can trust, they can make good decisions on their own. These kids, the one that I said before, they'll just be able to learn better through desirable difficulties. And that makes me as a better teacher. And I think that also makes the children better learners. So another way, it also makes me as a better parent. Whenever you give your child a new task, do not interrupt and take over yourself as if they are being slow or not doing it precisely according to your instructions. Instead, support them by asking if they're having problems. Because after some trial and error, they'll master it and reap the benefits of learning a new skill, which will also boost their self-esteem. Thanks for listening.